Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm out with yet another crochet tutorial, and this time I'm going to teach you how to make this super beautiful dragonfly top. I can promise you that this project is going to be quite simple, even though it might look a little bit difficult, I'm not sure, but otherwise, as always, I have made sure that I'm explaining everything in as much details as I can, and perhaps even this time I'm going into more detail than usual, so I hope that it's going to be useful for all the beginners out there who want to make something cute. Otherwise, this project is a big one, so be prepared that you might have to spend several evenings or days or even weeks, depending on the speed and how much time you have, but at the end you will get this super cute top, so I hope that you are just as excited as I am. And yeah, as I mentioned, I'm explaining everything as much as I can. Otherwise, if you feel like I'm going too fast or too slow, then just feel free to adjust the speed of the video and I'm sure that it will help. But otherwise, if you need more help or more guidance, or if you have any questions, then just feel free to reach out in the comment section below and I will try to help you from there. Besides that, I have also prepared a written version of this pattern, which is linked down below, so please support my work. I would be super happy. But now, without further ado, let's jump into it. Here are the materials that I will be using. Here I have some yarn, which is 4-ply cotton, and here are some more specs just in case if you are interested. Within this tutorial I will be making size small to medium, and for that I will need approximately 450 grams of this yarn. However, if you want to use different materials, then just feel free to adjust the amount that is needed, as well as if you want to go a size up, you would have to add approximately 150 grams extra. And of course, for this project you will also need a crochet hook. I will be using 3.5mm hook, and you will also need some scissors. But now let's get started. So for the purpose of this tutorial, within this video I will be showing you how to create one of the panels for one of the sleeves, and here I have already made one, and the reasoning for that is that it's just basically a little bit smaller, so I will be able to show you all the steps quicker. But otherwise, this pattern will apply for any of the sizes that you are planning to create, no matter if it's a panel for the sleeve or panel for the front or back. The stitches will be the same, it's just that the count is going to change, and also the same will apply no matter what size you will create. You will basically just have to increase or decrease the amount of chains you are creating from the beginning. So here I have my panel here, and just let me quickly explain you how it's going to work. So panels will be worked from up to down, so you can see that I have my dragonfly here, so we will start from here. So this is going to be our first row, and then we will build it up by going further up. So that's the way how these dragonflies will be created. And in terms of how many chains or how many stitches you will have to do, so to create one dragonfly, this is basically the measurement or the width for one of them, you will have to do 32 chains in the very beginning. And then to add one extra one, you just have to increase the chain count by 26. So 32 plus 26, that gives us 58. And then to add more, you would have to do another 26, so 84 in total. So this is the width for the sleeve panel that you would have to do. And then of course front or back panels would of course be a little bit wider, so again you just have to keep on increasing by 26. And to make sure that this actually fits you, you can also easily measure once you have created these chains. So for the arm, you would basically just have to make sure that this width fits around your arm, and then if it does, then you are safe to proceed further. And the same would also apply for the front and back panel. You would just have to measure that from this point to this point, that it fits from one shoulder to another. So that's basically the way how you are measuring. I hope that this explanation within sizing and adjustments for chains and stitches is easy to understand. Otherwise, you're more than welcome to ask questions in the comment section, and there's also a written pattern attached below in the description box, so you can also check that out. But now, without further ado, let's proceed further with actually creating another sleeve for this top. So here I have my yarn and my crochet hook, and now we can actually proceed further with creating this panel for one of the sleeves. So our first step is to do a slip knot, so we can actually begin with doing some chains. And for slip knot, I'm just grabbing my yarn like this, then I'm twisting it to kind of create a cross, and then throughout this loop I'm just grabbing yarn and pulling it through to create a loop and a knot as well. And then I'm just putting this crochet hook inside this loop and adjusting the size so it actually fits exactly around the hook. So this is the slip knot, and then we can proceed with doing some chains. So for my size for this sleeve, I will be doing 84 chains in total, and to do a chain you just have to yarn over and then pull the yarn through the loop that you already had on your hook. So this is one chain, and then I'm just proceeding with repeating this process to create more of them. And just make sure that you are counting along as you are adding these chains to make sure that you're actually creating the amount that is needed for your size. So in my case here, I'm just proceeding with doing 84 chains in total, and I will meet you back again once I have created all of them. So here I have done all 84 chains, and this is how it looks. So this is also the width for my arm. So in case if you're not sure if it's going to fit you, you can just measure to make sure that this actually goes around your arm to ensure that it's going to fit. And now we can proceed further with first row, and for that we first have to skip the last 3 chains. So 1, 2 and 3. So these are the 3 chains that we are going to skip, and then in the 4th one, that's where we are going to add our first stitch. And also these 3 chains that we are going to skip, those are actually going to count as one double crochet, which is going to be the main stitch throughout this pattern. But now we can proceed with adding our first stitch inside here, which is also going to be a double crochet. And in case if you're not familiar with double crochet, you basically just have to yarn over, then go through this chain in here, then grab yarn and pull it through to have 3 loops on your hook, then yarn over again and pull through the first 2, then yarn over again for the second time and pull through the remaining 2, like that. So that's one double crochet, and then we just have to keep on doing the same throughout all the chains that we have in here. So I already did another one like that, and then just going through the next chain that we have here and doing another double crochet. So all you have to do is just go through all the chains that you just did during the first step and add double crochet inside each of them. So let's do another one together. So yarning over, going through the chain, grabbing yarn and pulling it up to have 3 loops on our hook, then yarning over and pulling through 2, yarning over again and pulling through remaining 2, like that. So just keep on adding double crochets until you reach the very end of all of these chains here, and that's where I'm going to meet you back again. So here I have done double crochets all the way through the end of all of these chains, and now we are done with the first row, which means we can turn our work and then begin working also on the second row. So first, to get started, we have to chain 3, so 1, 2 and 3, and this chain of 3 is going to count as one double crochet, so just keep that in mind. And because we just did these chains and they count as a stitch, we can actually skip this first one because we don't want to create an extra one, and then starting from the second one, that is where we are going to do our first official stitch for this row. So starting from there, we are again doing double crochets, and in total in the beginning of this second row we have to do 13 double crochets more. So here I have done already 2 and working on the third one already, so just make sure to count along and to do in total 13 double crochets plus this chain of 3 that you did in the very beginning. So in total, technically you have to have 14 double crochets. So just do that, and then I will show you what you have to do next. Here I have done 13 double crochets, plus we have this chain of 3 in the very beginning. So technically we have 14 double crochet stitches. And now the next step for us is to chain 2, 1 and 2. And then we are skipping this one stitch at the bottom and then starting to do stitches from the following one. And then in total we have to do 25 double crochets. But remember to chain 2 and skip 1 and then do 25 double crochets. So that is what you have to do for now, and just count along to ensure that you have all 25 stitches that are required for this step. So here I have done 25 double crochets, and this is how it looks. And also this is basically the step that you have to do in between this panel. So now you basically just have to repeat chaining 2, skipping 1, and then doing 25 double crochets. And you basically just have to keep on doing this as long as your panel requires or allows you to do that. So just repeat doing that until you are kind of like almost at the very end of this panel. So for this sleeve panel, I'm actually able to repeat it only twice, and then I'm almost at the very end. So for now I'm just doing these 25 double crochets, and then I will meet you once I'm getting closer to the end of the second row. So here I have done again 25 double crochets, and I'm almost at the very end, but I can still do chain of 2 and skipping 1, and then proceeding further with doing double crochets. And as you can see, I don't have space enough to do 25 of them, but in total I have 14 stitches left, so I'm just going to do 14 double crochets. And actually it's going to be exactly the same as it was in the very beginning of this row, meaning that we started with 14 double crochets in the beginning as well. So whenever we are ending the row, we will be ending that in the same way as we started. So that's just something to note. So now in total I just have to do 1 double crochet inside every single stitch that I have here, and it's going to be exactly the same as the beginning. So just continue doing that until you reach the very end, and make sure to double count just to make sure that you actually have 14 double crochets. So here I have also finished the second row, and just comparing with the beginning how I started it, you can see that it's basically the same. So just keep that in mind to also double check. And now we can proceed working with the third row. So for that we are just first turning our work like this, and then our first step is to chain 3, so 1, 2 and 3, and again as always it's going to count as 1 double crochet. And then to begin we just have to, again always we would have to skip the first stitch that we have here, because this chain of 3 is going to count as double crochet, just so we are not adding an extra stitch in there. And then starting from the next stitch we are adding double crochets again, and for the third row in total we have to do 8 double crochets, plus with this chain of 3 in the beginning we will technically have 9 double crochet stitches. So just do that, and then I will meet you back again once we are proceeding with the next step. So here I have done 8 double crochets, and with chain of 3 in the very beginning it actually counts as 9 double crochets. And as you can see, and also if it's easier for you to memorize, I'm basically 5 stitches away from this gap. So if you wish, you can kind of like do the double crochets until you are 5 stitches away from this gap during this row. But now as we are here, our next step is to actually chain 11. So I'm just proceeding with doing that, and just make sure to count along as you are doing these 11 chains. So here I have done 11 chains, and then after that we have to skip also 11 stitches in total. So here we already have these 5, the gap counts as 1 stitch, and then on this side we also have to count 5 and do double crochets in the 6. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we are skipping these, and starting from this one, that is where we are adding our double crochet. So I'm just doing that in here like that. So this is how it's supposed to look now. And then in total here we have to do 15 double crochets, or we have to do double crochets until we are 5 stitches away from this gap. So here I already have the first one, and in total I'm just making sure that I'm doing 15 double crochets or until I am 5 stitches away from the next gap. So just keep on adding double crochets in here, and then I will meet you back once we are again doing some chains and once we have basically reached the next gap in there. So here I have done all 15 double crochets, and now I'm also 5 stitches away from this gap. So here we are again repeating the same that we did here. So now we just have to do 11 chains. So count along to make sure that you do 11 in total. So here I have my 11 chains again, and from now on the process is basically repeating again. So now I'm just counting to skip 11 in total. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and adding double crochets starting from this 6th stitch after the gap. So this is how it looks so far. And all you have to do now is just repeat the steps that we did. So now you have to do 15 double crochets that we did here, and then again repeat doing 11 chains just in case if you have to do that. So these are the steps that you have to repeat, and I will meet you later once we are getting closer to, or actually finishing this 3rd row. So here I have added another gap, which is actually going to be the last one for this row, and now in the remaining stitches that I have here, I just have to keep on adding double crochets, and in total I have to do 9 double crochets, just the same way as we started this row in the very beginning. So just add 1 double crochet inside every single stitch, and then once you have reached the very end of this row, you will also have to do you will also basically just have this chain of 3 that I have here, and as you remember, it counts as 1 double crochet. So actually the 9th stitch that we have to do it on top of this chain of 3. So just make sure that you are doing that, and in this way you have added all 9 double crochets on all the stitches that you had to do like this. So this is how it looks so far, and now we are done with this 3rd row as well, and just double checking the very beginning. As you can see, it's the same. We started it in the same way as we also finished, and now we can proceed further with the 4th row. So for that, again, the beginning part is the same. We first have to turn our work, and then we are chaining 3, 1, 2, 3, and again this chain of 3 is going to count as 1 double crochet, and because it counts as 1 double crochet, we are skipping this 1st stitch, and then starting from the 2nd one we are adding our double crochets, and now in total we will have to do 7 double crochets, plus we also have this chain of 3, so technically we have to do 8 double crochets, or until we are 1 stitch away from this big gap. So proceed with doing double crochets until you are 1 stitch away, and that's where I will explain you what you are supposed to do next. So here I'm just adding the very last stitch here, 1 stitch away like that, and then I have reached this stitch right before the gap, and in there we have to do 2 double crochets, inside this same stitch. So this is one, and then just adding another one inside the same space like this. So this is how it's supposed to look. And then we can proceed with the next step, which is to do 4 chains. So 1, 2, 3 and 4 like this. Once that's done, our next step is to actually do a single crochet. So that's a new stitch throughout this pattern. We won't use it too often, but it's going to be a very simple one. And this single crochet, it also has to be done up through this hole that we have to that we added in here during the second row. So to do a single crochet, you have to go through this hole in here, then grab yarn and pull it up to have 2 loops on your hook, then yarn over and pull through both loops like this. So this is how it's supposed to look once you have added this single crochet that stretches 2 rows below. And once that's done, we again have to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then our next step is to do 2 double crochets, and these 2 double crochets will have to be done in this first stitch right after the gap. So I'm proceeding with doing 1 double crochet inside this stitch, and then in the same stitch I'm also adding the second one like this. So this is how it's supposed to look, and this is how this part looks like now. And then once that is done, our next step is to do 13 double crochets, or until we are again 1 stitch away before the gap. So now basically just proceed with doing double crochets until you have reached this stitch in here, and then the process is basically again starting to repeat. So now I have reached this next gap and I'm 1 stitch away. So in this stitch we are again doing 2 double crochets, and all of them or both of them are in the same stitch like that. And then we are proceeding with chaining 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we are doing single crochet that goes below in this gap in here. So I'm just doing that in there like that, and after that we again have to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we are doing 2 double crochets in this stitch right after the gap. So again those are done together in the same space like that, and then we just have to do 13 double crochets again until we reach this 1 stitch before the gap. So this is basically the process that you have to repeat in between this row. So just keep on doing that until you have gone all the way through and completed this last bit for the dragonfly body basically. And then again I will just meet you once we are almost finishing this row, just to show you how we are supposed to end it. So here I have done this last dragonfly, and I also did these 2 double crochets inside this same stitch, and then it's just left to also do double crochet stitches inside the remaining stitches that I have here. So in total, to end this row, we just have to do 8 double crochets, and we also just have to remember that one of them or last of them will have to be done on top of the chain of 3 that we did in the very beginning of this previous row. So just keep on doing these double crochets until you have completed also this row, and just remember that last stitch has to go on top of the chain of 3 because that also technically counts as 1 double crochet. So I'm just completing the last stitch in here and just going through this chain in there like that. And if we compare again, this beginning and end of this row is basically the same because we have the same amount of stitches on both sides. And after that we can again turn our work and proceed working with the 5th row. So as always, to begin the row, which in this case is 5th row, we just have to chain 3. So 1, 2 and 3, and then also we are skipping the 1st stitch and starting to do double crochets from the 2nd stitch because chain of 3 counts as double crochet. And then we just have to do 9 double crochet stitches in total, plus with this chain of 3 that we did in the beginning, it technically counts as 10 double crochets. So just keep on doing that and just add these stitches until you basically have reached this gap here. So just add double crochets until you get to that point. So here I have done 9 double crochets, and with chain of 3 that we did in the beginning, it counts as 10 double crochet stitches. And now I have reached this point where I am here at this gap, and inside this gap we are actually doing 4 double crochets. So all of these 4 double crochet stitches have to go inside this very same gap, so just add them inside here. Here I have done all 4 of them like this, and then our next step is to chain 1 like that, and then we are kind of skipping this single crochet that we have here, and our next step is to do 4 double crochets also in this second gap. So just add 4 double crochet stitches also in the following gap right after the single crochet like this. So this is how it looks right now, and then we are just proceeding with doing double crochets on top of regular stitches, and in total we will have to do 17 double crochets, or until we have basically reached the next gap, which would be in here, which is 17 stitches away. So just keep on doing double crochets all the way through until you have reached this next gap, and that's where I'm going to meet you back again. And from then on, again, this process is going to be pretty much the same and quite repetitive. Here I have done all 17 double crochets and I have reached this gap. So again, as I said, it's repetitive, so now we just have to do 4 double crochet stitches inside this gap, and I'm already working on the 3rd one, and then also adding the 4th one like this. So that's how it looks. Then after that we are chaining 1 and proceeding with the next gap, so technically skipping this single crochet that we have, and in the next gap we are also adding 4 double crochets, so exactly the same as we did in the first gap, to ensure that both sides of this dragonfly are exactly the same. So here I have done 4 double crochet stitches, and then again we are just proceeding with doing double crochets on top of regular stitches, and in total we have to do 17 double crochets, or if you don't want to count, you just basically have to do double crochets until you reach the next gap. So this is everything that you have to repeat, so just keep on doing double crochets until you reach the gap. In the gap do 4 double crochets, then chain 1 and do 4 double crochets again in the next gap. So these are all the stitches that needs to be done for this row, so just keep on doing that, and then again I will meet you back once we are able to do the final double crochet stitches for the end of this row. And here I have also completed the last bit, so here it's just left to do 10 double crochets, 1 on top of each stitch from the remaining stitches that we have, as well as the last one would go on top of this chain of 3, and it has to look exactly the same basically as we started. So also 10 double crochets in the beginning that we had. So now just proceed with doing those 10 double crochet stitches, 1 on top of every single stitch that you have from the previous row, and the last one would go on top of the chain of 3, which also counts as double crochet. And here I'm done with row 5, and if I just compare it, you can see that it looks at the end exactly the same as we started. And now we can proceed with row 6. So for that we are just flipping our work like that, and then we can proceed with this row 6, and actually row 6 and 7 are going to be exactly the same, so you can memorize these steps for both of the following rows. So in the beginning we are chaining 3, 1, 2 and 3, and again it counts as 1 double crochet, and because of that we are skipping this first stitch that we have here, and from the following one we are doing double crochets. And in the beginning of this row we have to do 13 double crochet stitches, and with the chain of 3 that we did in the very beginning, it actually counts as 14 double crochets. So keep on doing that, or also technically you just have to keep on doing double crochets until you reach this gap in here. So do double crochet stitches until you are at this gap in there. So here I have done 13 double crochets, plus with chain of 3 it's actually 14 double crochet stitches, and the last of these double crochets was right before the gap. So now I have actually reached the gap, and once I'm here I just have to chain 1, and then I'm just skipping this gap and proceeding with doing double crochets right on top of the first stitch after this gap. And then our next step is to just do 25 double crochet stitches, one on top of each stitch that we have here, or until we have reached the next gap that is here. So proceed with adding these double crochet stitches until you reach the following gap, and in there we are just going to do the same. So I will just meet you there to quickly explain again. So here I have done 25 double crochets, and I have also reached this gap. So again we just have to chain 1, skip the gap, and start doing double crochets from the stitch right after the gap. And again we just have to do 25 double crochets or until we have reached the next gap, which is here. So this is what you have to keep on repeating in between this row until you are reaching the very end where we have less stitches, and that's where you just have to do regular double crochets until you reach the end, but I will meet you once we get there. So this is how it looks right now, and here you can see I have also skipped this last gap that I have for this row, and I just have these stitches remaining for this row. So on top of each of them I'm just doing 1 double crochet, and in total at the end of this row we just have to do 14 double crochets, so technically the same way as we started this row. And also the last of these double crochets will go on top of this chain of 3 that we have in the very beginning of the previous row. So just continue with doing this until you have gone all the way through all of these stitches and finish this row. So here I have completed this 6th row, and if I compare you can see that beginning and end of this row is exactly the same. So now I can flip my work and proceed working with the 7th row. And as I mentioned, 7th row is going to be exactly the same as the 6th row. So what you have to do is just repeat all of the stitches and all of the steps that we just did for the 6th row. And just to remind you, we are starting with chain of 3, then we are skipping the first stitch, and then from the following one we are starting to add double crochets. And basically the thing is that you have to just do double crochets until you reach the gap, then chain 1, skip the gap, and continue doing double crochets on top of every single stitch until you reach the next gap. So just do that for the 7th row until you have gone all the way through, and then I will meet you back again once we are able to proceed working on the 8th row, where we will have some a little bit more different steps to also add these dragonflies on the sides of this panel. So here I have also finished row 7, which was basically the same as row 6. And now again, since I'm here at the very end of this row, I can just flip my work, and with that we can proceed further with working on row 8. So starting from row 8, we will actually be finalizing this dragonfly that we have here by adding another gap in here, as well as we will be starting to add new dragonflies that will come here on the side. We will have half of it, and then in the middle here we will have a complete ones that we will start working on. So one will be here, another one here, and then here on the end we will have another half of the dragonfly. But now to proceed working on this 8th row, we just have to begin, and in the beginning here we have to chain 5. So 1, 2, 3, 4 and 5, and this chain of 5 is going to count as 1 double crochet as well as gap of chain of 2. So the same that we did here. So here we did chain 2 and skipped 1, so this also kind of like includes those 2 chains that we have here. And then our next step would be to do double crochet, but before we are doing that we just have to skip 2. So 1 and 2, and we are skipping 2 because we have this chain of 3 that counts as 1 double crochet, therefore we have to skip that one, as well as we have to skip another stitch just to kind of make this gap. And then we will be doing 12 double crochets. So starting from this 3rd stitch, we are just doing 12 double crochet stitches. So I'm just proceeding with doing that. So here I have done 12 double crochets, and now I have reached this dragonfly, so we can just finalize it by chaining 1, skipping this gap, and then again starting to do 12 double crochets. And yeah, we have to do 12 again, and with that we will have reached here this middle part. So after you have created this gap, do in total another 12 double crochets. And here I have done 12 double crochets again. So now what we have to do is basically chain 2 and skip 1 stitch, and that is basically going to be the same that we did here for this dragonfly here. So now I'm just chaining 2 like that, then skipping this one and doing double crochet in the following, and again in total we have to do 12 double crochet stitches, or basically until we reach this dragonfly here, where we will have to chain 1 and then skip 1 and do double crochets. So this is basically again just repetitive process. We have to do 12 double crochets, then here on top of already existing dragonfly we are chaining 1 and skipping 1, and then again doing 12 double crochets, and where we are kind of starting to create a new dragonfly we are chaining 2 and skipping 1. So that's the only difference, otherwise this process is quite repetitive. So just continue with doing this, and then again I will just meet you at the end, where we will have to add kind of like the half dragonfly that we did here in the beginning of this 8th row. So I will just see you there. And here I have also completed the last dragonfly, so now I'm just again proceeding with doing 12 double crochets in total, or basically until I am 2 stitches away from finishing this row. So it should look like this. Here I have done 12 double crochets, and here I have 2 stitches left. So now again I just have to chain 2, then I'm skipping this 1 stitch, and then on top of this chain of 3 that also counts as a double crochet, I'm adding in the very last double crochet stitch like that. So now row 8 is also finalized, and as you can see we have finalized it in the same way as we have started with this gap that we have here. So now that we are done with row 8, we can again flip our work and we can proceed with row 9. So here in the very beginning we are just proceeding further with working on this dragonfly that will be here on the side, and our first step now is to just chain 9. So I'm just starting to do that. So here I have done 9 chains, and in this case these 9 chains are actually going to count as 1 double crochet plus 6 chains for kind of creating like the half of this gap that we have here from a complete dragonfly. So that's just something to keep in mind. And then once that is done, we are actually skipping 5 stitches that we have here. So also including with this gap, we are in total skipping 6 stitches. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and here on this 7th, that is where we are starting to add double crochets. And in total we will have to do 15 double crochet stitches. So I'm just doing that, and basically then I will have kind of like gotten until this point where we will also have to do some chains again, but I will meet you then. And just also keep in mind that once you have reached this gap, this is also where you have to add in a double crochet stitch. So from now on we are kind of closing this dragonfly since we have completed it. And then once you have added a double crochet stitch in there, you can just continue further with doing double crochet stitches until you have done 15 of them in total, or basically until you are 5 stitches away from this next gap. So just do that. And so here I have done 15 double crochet stitches, and I'm basically 5 stitches away from this gap. And now our next step is basically to start working on adding this dragonfly that we did previously. It's just that now it's placed in a different position in our panel here. And now our next step, as you remember, is to just chain 11. So I'm just doing that and doing these 11 chains. And here I have done all of these 11 chains. So now technically we have to skip 11 stitches. So that includes these 5 here, then 1 that is for the gap, and 5 on the other side. So if it's easier for you, you can just count 5 stitches from here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then starting from the 6th one, that is again where we are doing our first double crochet stitch like this. And then in total we again have to do 15 double crochets, or until we are 5 stitches away from this next gap. So this is basically what you have to repeat doing. So just do 15 double crochets or until you are 5 stitches away from the next gap. And then again you just have to do 11 chains and skip 11 stitches, or basically start doing double crochets 5 starting from the 6th stitch after this gap here. So that is the whole process that you have to keep on repeating in between this panel. And then I will meet you back again once we reach the end, where we kind of will have to, or we will try to replicate what we have here in the beginning of this row. So from now on, just keep on repeating these stitches in between this panel. And here I have also added this last complete 11 chain gap for one of the dragonflies. And here I am almost at the very end of this row. It's just left for me to do 2 last double crochets, and then with that I'm again 5 stitches away from this very last gap that we have here. And here at the end we just again have to do 6 chains. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and 6, so basically the same as in the beginning. And then we just have to add 1 double crochet, and in this case this double crochet is going to go on top of the 3rd chain from the very beginning of this row. So I'm just going through this chain in here, and that is where we are adding this double crochet like that. So now we have also ended this row in the same way kind of as we started, and we have this gap that we have here. And once that's done, we can again just flip our work and start working on the row 10. So to start working on row 10, I just first have to chain 1 like this, and in this case this chain of 1 is actually going to count as 1 single crochet. So this is a little bit different and something that you just have to keep in mind. But after that we just have to do single crochet, and again this single crochet is going to go through this gap 2 rows below. So doing a single crochet in there like this, and we are kind of connecting these 2 gaps together. And then after that we basically again just have to do the same thing that we did here, where after doing single crochet we just have to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then in this first stitch right after the gap we just have to do 2 double crochets inside this very same space. So here I have added 1, and then again adding the second one like this. And then once that's done we just have to proceed further with doing double crochets, which in this case is going to be 15 double crochets, or until you are 1 stitch away from this gap. So just proceed with doing 15 double crochets, and you might have noticed that this is again very similar as it was during the previous rows where we were working on the first dragonfly, just because we are literally repeating the same process and the same pattern that we have already created. So just continue with doing these 15 double crochets or until you are 1 stitch away from the next gap. And then once you get there here like this, in this stitch right before the gap, we are again doing 2 double crochets inside the same space. So 1 and 2 like that. And then our next step is to do the same that we did here. So first we are just doing 4 chains, 1, 2, 3 and 4, and then we are doing single crochet through these through the gap below, like that, doing a single crochet in there. And then after that, again, we are just chaining 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4. And then the same step, again, we are just adding 2 double crochet stitches inside this first stitch right after the gap, like that. And then we are again doing double crochets until we reach this stitch, which is 1 stitch away before again this big gap. So again, these steps are repeating, and I will just meet you back here at the very end so we can finalize this row together, and I can show you how we can make it look in the same way as we started this 10th row. And here I am at the end of this row, so 1 stitch away, and in this last stitch again we are just adding 2 double crochet stitches as we normally do right before the gap. So here I have added the second one like this, and then we have to chain 4, 1, 2, 3 and 4 like this. And then again we are just adding single crochet that is stretching down here inside this gap. So I'm just adding a single crochet in here like that. And then to finalize this row, we just have to do 1 single crochet, which has to be done inside the 3rd chain from the very beginning. So I'm just going through this chain in here like this and just adding another single crochet like that. So this is how it's supposed to look, and now we are done with this row 10 as well, and here you can compare how it looks on both of these sides. And then once row 10 is finalized, we can again just flip our work, and then we can proceed further with working on row 11. So to get started, we first just have to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3 and 4, and this chain of 4 is going to count as 1 double crochet as well as chain of 1 for the gap. And with chain of 1 gap, I mean this gap that we have here right in the middle of the dragonfly. So we always have to consider that we are still kind of like adding this middle part. Then after that, our next step is to actually add 4 double crochets here inside this gap right after the single crochet stitch. So here I'm just adding 4 double crochet stitches, already working on the 3rd and then also the 4th like this. So this is also the same process that we normally have for the complete dragonflies that we have here. So 4 double crochets are added, and now I'm just starting to add double crochet starting from the 1st stitch right after the gap, and in total right after the gap we will have to do 17 double crochet stitches, or until we reach the next gap for the following dragonfly that we have here. So just continue adding double crochet stitches, 1 on top of each stitch that you have after this gap, or until you have literally just reached this next dragonfly. And then once you have reached this next gap, it's again the same steps that we have done before. So first we are doing 4 double crochet stitches inside this very first gap that we have here. So here I have completed already the 3rd stitch and then also doing the 4th one like that. Then our next step is to chain 1, and we are skipping this single crochet and starting to again add 4 double crochets inside this next gap right after the single crochet stitch. So again, as I said, this is quite repetitive because we are just continuing to do or repeating to do the same stitches that we did for dragonfly before. And then once you have done all of these 4 inside this gap, then you are again proceeding with doing 17 double crochet stitches in total right after the gap, or do double crochet stitches basically until you reach the next one. So just repeat with doing these steps in the middle of this row, in the middle of this panel basically, and then I will meet you back again to finalize this half dragonfly that we have at the end of this row. But otherwise, just keep on repeating these steps that we have here in the middle of this row. And here I have also reached the very last gap. So again, the same process. First, I'm just adding 4 double crochet stitches inside this gap, so 2, and then also adding the 3rd and the 4th one, like this. And then we just kind of have to finalize. So first we are again just chaining 1, and then we are also kind of skipping this single crochet, and then on top of the very last stitch that we have here, right after this single crochet, we have this single crochet from the previous row, and on top of that we are going to add 1 double crochet. So I'm just going inside this stitch and then adding a double crochet in there, like that. So now we have also added a gap in here on top of the very last stitch, and with that we have also finalized this 11th row. And if we compare, you can see that it is similar as we started this row. And now that row 11th is finalized, we can again just flip our work and proceed further with working on the next row. So the next one is row 12, and actually row 12 and 13 are going to be exactly the same. So I'm just going to explain you the steps, and then just remember to do it basically twice. So for row 12, to start, we first just have to chain 4. So 1, 2, 3, and 4. And this chain of 4 is going to count as 1 double crochet as well as chain of 1. And chain of 1 is meant for basically creating another gap here. And then once that's done, we are just adding a double crochet right after this gap that we have here, like this. And then we can just proceed further with doing double crochet stitches until we reach this next gap, or basically in total it's going to be 25 double crochets until we have reached that next gap. So just keep on doing double crochets until you reach the next gap that you have there, and then the process is going to be basically the same. So here I have done 25 double crochets and basically I have reached this gap. So the process here is again the same. I just have to chain 1, then I'm skipping the gap and starting to do double crochets from the first stitch right after the gap. And again in total it's going to be 25 double crochet stitches, or basically just do double crochets until you reach the next gap, and then you will have to do the same. So repeat that throughout this round, and then I will meet you back here at the very end so we can finalize this round together. And here I am at the very end of this row, so I have reached this last gap. And again, the process here is very similar. So first I'm just chaining 1, then I'm skipping 1 chain from the bottom, and then in the 3rd chain I'm adding another double crochet, which is going to be the very last stitch for this row, like this. So now this row is finalized, which was row 12, and we can flip our work and proceed with doing row 13, which is going to be exactly the same. So just to begin, you first have to do 4 chains, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and again this chain of 4 counts as 1 double crochet as well as chain of 1 that we have here as a gap. And then from the stitch right after the gap, we are just proceeding with adding double crochet stitches. And whenever you meet the gap, you again are supposed to chain 1, skip the gap, and proceed further with doing double crochets. So just repeat the same that you did for row 12, also for row 13, and go all the way through. And then I will meet you back again once we are able to start working on row 14. So here row 13 is finalized, and now we can flip our work to proceed working on row 14. And row 14 is again going to be quite similar. So basically what we are going to do, we will add the last gap here for our existing dragonfly that we have here. We have the half and then like the full ones that are in the middle of this panel, and then we will also start working on a new one here in between the dragonflies that we have already. So again, it's going to be quite similar to what we have done already. So first what we have to do is just that we have to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, and 4, and again this counts as 1 double crochet and chain 1, and then we just have to start doing double crochets starting from the first stitch right after the gap. So in there I'm just adding a double crochet, and then in total we just have to add 12 double crochets until we have kind of like reached the middle part that we have here, or basically exactly this stitch that we have here down below. So just do 12 double crochets in total, and then I will meet you back again. So here I have done 12 double crochet stitches, and as you can see, I'm exactly on top of this dragonfly here. So now we are supposed to work on adding a new one, and our first step here is that we are just doing 2 chains, so 1 and 2, and then we are skipping 1 stitch here, and then starting to do double crochets again, and in total we again have to do 12 double crochet stitches, or basically until we reach this gap that we have here. So again, just proceed with doing 12 double crochet stitches. So here I have done again 12 double crochets, and I have reached this gap, and once you're here you're just supposed to chain 1 like this, and then again from the stitch right after the gap you are just supposed to add 12 double crochets again until you have reached this middle part that we have in between the dragonflies, and then we are again repeating what we did before. So we are just doing 2 chains and then skipping 1 stitch like this. So these are all the steps that you have to repeat in between this 14th row. So just proceed with doing that, and again I will meet you at the very end so we can finalize this row together. And so here I am at the end of this row 14. So again, just doing a double crochet on top of the stitch before the gap, then chaining 1, then skipping 1 chain that we have here in this gap, and then adding double crochet on top of the 3rd chain from these chains that we have here on the side like this. So this double crochet is the last stitch that we have for this row, and we are just double checking so you can see that it's finished in the same way as we started, and we have also completed this half of the dragonfly that we have. And now we can just flip our work and proceed working on the 15th row. But as you can see, we have now added 2 sets of dragonflies. One of them is here, and then the second set is basically in between them, as well as here on the side. So from now on the process is very repetitive, you just have to keep on repeating. So here you can see that for row 15 you basically just have to repeat what you did for row 3. So just proceed with repeating these stitches that you have here, and then for row 16 it would be that you have to repeat row 4, then row 5, row 6, row 7, and so on. And basically you just have to keep on adding more rows until you have built the length of this panel, which in my case this is the panel for the arm. So basically you just have to add more dragonflies to establish this length for the arm, however long it is. So just continue with doing that and adding these rows to kind of create more dragonflies, and then I will meet you back again once we have finalized this panel. So here I have finished the whole panel for one of the sleeves, and this is how it looks. So now we can actually fasten off, and to do that, here you can see that I have completed the very last stitch for the very last row. So once you are here, to fasten off you basically just have to chain 1, then make this loop a little bit longer, then you can grab your scissors and cut off yarn here like this, and then as it's cut off you just have to tighten this end in a secure knot by pulling this loose end of yarn that you have here, and then you're officially done with your panel. And once you have created one, then you basically just have to make another one in the exact same size for the other sleeve, and then 2 more panels, one for front and one for back. And for those you just have to note that you probably have to make them wider and bigger, and basically just do that and make them in the size that fit you the best. And also a small note about the last rows of each panel. So here you can see that I have worked on the very last dragonflies that I had, and for the row that is almost the last one. I basically just finished these dragonflies that I had, and I didn't start to work on a new one here. Instead, I just skipped that stitch, and then after that, the very last row was just double crochets on its own to kind of create like a smoother finishing, which would look nicer, and also it would help us to connect panels together later on. And then once you have all 4 panels ready, 2 for front and back and 1 for each sleeve, we can proceed further with actually connecting them together. And to start doing that, for making things easier, I just like to lay out all of the panels on the floor so it's easier to understand what goes where. So here you can see that I have laid out front and back panels, one on top of each other, and then sleeve panels are coming on the sides, exactly in the middle of front and back panels. And also it's very helpful to actually place in some stitch markers to note exactly where is the middle of the arm panel and where would be the start and finish of each of them, because we have to connect them in exactly the same spot on both of the sides. So I would advise to do that. After that, we can actually proceed with connecting them together. So first I would be connecting front and back panels in the shoulder parts, so approximately 1/3 on each side, which would be here, and then also the same on the other side. And again, we just have to make sure that we are connecting an equal length on both of the sides, so it's also advised to place some stitch markers in there. Then after that, I would proceed with connecting arm panels to the sides of front and back panels, which would be here. And as you can see, I have also placed stitch markers in there to make sure that I'm connecting them in the right spots. And then once that's done, I'm turning this whole thing kind of like inside out by flipping it on one side. So you can see that we are now kind of like shaping it in the shape of a sweater. And then our next step is to connect the bottom of the sleeve and then also sides of the front and back panels. So I would be doing that on one side, and then of course also the same thing also on the other side. So to connect panels together, we will be using slip stitches, so I'm just going to show you how to do that. And for that, you basically just need your yarn. Make sure that you're using the same color as you did for your panels, so it blends in and the connection point is not visible. And then in this instance, I will be connecting together these shoulder parts. So for that, we first just have to attach yarn, and I'm just making sure that I'm going through this corner stitch on both of the panels. So I'm going with my crochet hook through both of these stitches in the corner, then grabbing yarn and pulling it through, and then just attaching it by making a secure knot to make sure that it stays there and it's not going to unravel. So this is our starting point, and now we can continue with actually doing slip stitches. So first, where we have this yarn attached, I'm just again going through with my crochet hook through the same stitch basically, and then I'm just grabbing this yarn and pulling it through to kind of have a loop on our hook, so it also helps us to get started. And then we are just chaining one, and with that we can proceed with next stitch. So we are always making sure that we are connecting exactly the same stitch on both of the panels, so make sure that these stitches are facing each other on both of the sides. So now to proceed further with actually doing slip stitches, first I'm going through the following stitch on this panel and then going through the same stitch also on the other panel like this. Then just grabbing yarn and pulling it through both stitches, and then this loop we are also pulling it through the loop that we already had on our hook like that. So that's one slip stitch, and that's basically what we have to do to connect all of these stitches together to make sure that we are actually creating this shoulder part connection, and so making sure that they are attached and connected where it needs to be done. But yeah, then you're just continuing and repeating to do slip stitches all the way through until you have reached your desired point, which in my case is this stitch marker. So with that, I'm just helping myself to remember where I have to do the last stitch and where is the last slip stitch that needs to be done. And so here I have done slip stitches up until this stitch marker. So now I can actually remove this stitch marker, and it's just left for us to do one more slip stitch in the stitches where stitch marker was. So I'm just doing that like this. So now we have connected this shoulder part here, and we can fasten off. And for that, again, you just have to chain one, then make this loop a little bit longer. And in this case, if you're not sure if you have left enough space or if you wanted to leave less space for your neck, you're more than welcome to just make this loop a little bit longer so you have more yarn, just in case if you later on want to connect more stitches for the shoulder part. So that's what I'm doing here. And then you can just cut this yarn like that, and as it's cut off, you can tighten it in a secure knot by pulling this loose end here. Otherwise, this shoulder part is now connected, and if you want to check on the other side, you can see that it has created very nice and smooth connection between both panels, and slip stitches on the other side are not visible at all. So that is how you would connect panels together when you have stitch to stitch. It's a little bit easier, but for example here, when proceeding with connecting front and back panels together with the arm panel, you can see that arm panel has stitches, while this side of front and back panels, they have rows. So in that instance, you just have to be a little bit more strategic and kind of measure where exactly each stitch and each row would come. So kind of make sure that you are spreading your slip stitches out evenly, and if it helps, you're more than welcome to place more stitch markers to kind of know that you are connecting evenly on both sides until you reach the next milestone, which would be the following stitch marker. But otherwise, the principle is the same. You have to start by attaching yarn here. I have marked this as my starting point, and then just proceed with doing slip stitches. Here is the middle point between both of these panels, and then continue further until you reach the end point, which in my case is this one, and then just as you are done, just fasten off in the same way as we did before. And then when connecting bottom of the arm as well as sides of the front and back panels, it's going to be again a little bit different. So in this case, you would be connecting side of row to row. So basically you would just again have to measure that you are spreading these slip stitches evenly, and I would advise to do like 1 to 2 slip stitches for each row, but otherwise you're just connecting exactly the same row with each other. And here we even have this dragonfly, which looks quite nice, although a little bit alienated, but otherwise it gives this super smooth look also on the sides, and you can see how important it is that you're actually connecting exactly the same row, so you are keeping this pattern and each row is facing each other as well. So just make sure that you are doing that once connecting these sides of the arms as well as front and back panels. And then when you are done with connecting all of the panels, the very last step would be to weave in all of these loose ends that you might have. So with your project being still turned with inside out, basically what you have to do is just weave in these loose ends, and you can use whatever method you wish. I would be using my crochet hook, but if it's easier for you, you're also more than welcome to use a darning needle or whatever helps you the best. And to weave these loose ends, basically what I'm doing is that I'm just going through random stitches in the back and just grabbing this yarn and weaving through these stitches. So here in this instance, I'm just hiding this loose end in the connection part between panels, because that's kind of like the easiest way to hide it and to make sure that it's not visible, and at the same time it's also not going to hang anywhere. So we're also making sure that our project is smooth also from the inside. So just do that with all the loose ends that you might have,
and then you're basically done with this project. And then once you have weaved in all of the loose ends, you can turn your project with the right side facing outwards, and then you are officially done. And here I'm done with my top, and this is how it looks on me. I'm super happy with how this project turned out and can't wait to actually start wearing this top. It gives a lot of summery vibes, which I totally love, and also for this project I was going for an oversized look, and I believe it turned out super great. However, if you feel like you want to have something that is more fitted, you're more than welcome to adjust stitches and chains that need to be done in the very beginning of each panel. Besides that, this project is highly customizable and adjustable, so also if you wanted to create this top longer, you're more than welcome to just add extra rows to create extra dragonflies, and that applies for both front and back panels as well as for the sleeves. So you're more than welcome to create everything longer or shorter, or feel free to turn this top into a vest or crop top, or you might come up with even something more fun.
So that is basically it from me today. I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope that this video is going to be useful for you in case you're planning to recreate this top. And if you do, then please feel free to tag me and share it with me. I'm super excited to see what you are creating and how your tops turned out. Otherwise, if you did enjoy this video, then please give me a big thumbs up, and if you have any requests or suggestions or something that you would like to see on my channel, then feel free to reach out and share your requests down below in the comment section or whatever is the most comfortable, and I will try to add that to my to-do list. But otherwise, if you're new here, then please subscribe, and I will see you next time. Bye!